I'm a firm believer from my own experience that when we are exposed to music and we're gifted access to musical education, musical appreciation, music appreciation, we are developed in a more amplified way, and we're able to understand nuances of feelings better, energetics better. And of course, sensitivities and sensibilities are also, it's another story, and it comes with responsibilities.
This is Unconditioning, Discovering the Voice Within, with Whitney Ann Jenkins.
Hello and welcome to the 108th episode of Unconditioning, Discovering the Voice Within, where I bring on guests and we talk about the inner authentic voice and the challenges and the rewards that come from following it. This episode, I have with me Dr. Marina Smirnova. This is part 2 of our conversation. Marina was born on Sakhalin Island in the far east of Russia, and well over 20 years ago, she made the U.S.A. her home. Her journey has been enriched by earning a bachelor degree in music education, a master's of arts degree in counseling, and a PhD degree in psychology with Transpersonal Psychology Concentration. She started her teaching path at the age of 18 as a K-12 music teacher. She began her contribution to Saybrook University in 2013, and in 2016 she became the Assistant Program Director for the Department of Humanistic and Clinical Psychology. And she currently serves as a full professor of psychology and consciousness, spirituality, and integrative health specialization director at Saybrook. She is the recipient of 2 Saybrook University awards, the Presidential Award for Excellence and Exemplary Humanistic Educator Award. Her interests are deeply humanistic and transpersonal in nature, and outside of the halls of academia, she supports adults' inner development by helping them to integrate fully their deeply evocative, exceptional human experiences. Such experiences often arise within and out of dreams, visions, visitations, spiritual practices, breathwork, visionary journeys, and reality-shattering UFO, ET, alien, non-human intelligence encounters. She supports experiencers transpersonally in their quest for spiritual vitality, fulfillment, vibrant longevity, soulful sovereignty, wholeness, and ascension. She also has a deep connection to the work of Stanislav Grof and holotropic breathwork. I've had the pleasure of having Marina as a professor at Saybrook, and I'm really excited to share this conversation. We have split this conversation up into 2 separate parts, and this is the second half of that conversation. So here is my conversation with Dr. Marina Smirnova. Enjoy.
Easing back. Kadri in Russian would be behind the scenes. Kadri meaning the frames, right? Frames behind the scenes. Sometimes the language just sips through. It's like, where is it coming from?
Very
But
it's like poetry,
yeah,
I like that.
yeah. Thank you. I like that too.
Like some symbols and imagery are very much something that I feel like the English language isn't so poetic sometimes compared to other ones.
When I was younger and little, I just thought like foreign languages. Wow, they're just so incredible. Wow, they're so much more interesting. So much more alluring. Now I get to appreciate the languages that I know. Just as they are, how they are, and working and navigating them. And that's another area of the liminal space and the opportunities for our calling and our daemon to help us navigate, because quite often I find myself in this, again, betwixt and between space, zone. Languages. It's like, okay, what is the term in Russian? What is the term in English? What is it in Belarusian?
So when you dream, what language do you dream in typically?
Yes, most of the time it is in English. I do have dreams in Russian. And when I do, it's like, oh, isn't it interesting? I remember this word that I said or a sentence or something, and it was in Russian. And that in and out of itself is very telling. And I'm glad that we are incorporating and leaning naturally into dream conversation, because that's a big one, right? About how do we receive guidance? How do we stay true, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also, I think to connect from your music world and that part of your life to connect it also as music is a bridge to the language of psychology, as you were describing earlier. Did you have aspirations for music and having a music career?
Yes, thank you for asking. So this is something that my mother really wanted for me. And there was a time, especially in college from 14 till 18, that very pivotal time where I wanted it for myself as well. So much so that I started teaching after finishing, college, my associate degree with honors with red diploma. I started teaching music. And then very gradually, but also in a very stark, almost like jolting way, I began realizing that there's something else that I'm supposed to be doing. That guidance of the guardian angel, of that daimon, of that deeper knowing, was sipping in. And note, please, that to the best of my knowledge, no one, even in my extended family, is in the field of psychology, let alone in the field of transpersonal psychology that values all sorts of unusual human experiences, values spirituality as an essential part of our being, and builds upon wisdom traditions of the world, and really invests in human potential and living our best, really invest in that. So there I was, I had psychology courses, educational psychology courses in college, but they were very different than psychology I am in. And I'm smiling ear from ear. I hope that's smiling. So, because there are many kind of psychologists, we gotta find our own, yes. The one that resonates with us, the one that calls us. And yes, so with that, I also had to make a decision. Do I continue living in Belarus? That was no longer at that time part of this former Soviet Union, which really former Soviet Union fell in 1991, fell apart. And so all of the 15 republics that were part of the former Soviet Union became independent, and that meant all sorts of things. So I had to decide after a number of years living in Belarus and struggling along with everyone else. It was 90s were very, very tough.
Yeah.
Like in terms of survival, basic survival. Yes. And they also were very activating for me. What do I choose? And at that point in time, my huge factor in my decision making was the fact that I became a mother. And I was no longer answerable for myself only. I needed to answer to my son, who was at the time very young, but I knew that time is flying by. So what do I choose for him on his behalf? And it was a huge risk. And it was a risk that came with sacrifices. No matter what I choose, it came with sacrifices. And I chose to come to the United States. So with that, I continued teaching here, first as a substitute teacher, and then also at the same time earning my master's degree in counseling. And then getting my first full-time music teaching position. It was 2002 in Michigan. So full-time vocal instrumental choir. So it was a diverse position, predominantly just general music and vocal, but instrumental. I was the one who was most of the time playing the piano and playing the parts and all of this, yes, and had very gifted, talented students who also helped. So with this, I was already edging out of only music, because at master's that came in somehow happened to be in counseling, and that came through connection with a teacher for whom I was subbing at that time. She was getting that master's, and so she was really excited about this program, and she was really speaking about this all the time. It's like, okay, no one else is speaking to me about any other programs, and I really would like to continue my education. Well, maybe I should put the toe, and I did.
What was it specifically about Michigan that like plopped you there?
That's destiny. It just how it worked out. Yes, it wasn't no particular plan, but this is how it worked out. You are connected to a circle of people
Oh yeah.
who draw you in, and this is where it's at. And I was in Michigan for a very long time, in my opinion, for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And in Sedona, yes, for a year and a half. It will be 2 years this summer. Yes, and something else about weaving back to also to dreams, that conversation, because connecting it to dreams, I guess, because for me, and in multiple possibilities, you and I are conversing today, yes. The call quite often, and the call correction comes in the dream time, in a dream escape, in a dream reality from me. And the trick is to honor, and for me, record, and I voice record my dreams on purpose. In the past, I would write them down. Now I voice record, and to me, personally, it works very well. So the trick is to voice record, and on time enough where all of the details are still alive and well. Sometimes I resist that, and I go back a day or two, sometimes longer later, because I was just not ready to record that kind of a dream.
Mm.
So that negotiation between what is waking life and what is dream life is an ongoing conversation of authenticity for me. Because in the dream life, in the dreamscape, I quite often receive skits and scenarios and lived experiences that are difficult to swallow. And we already know that, at least from perspective of Carl Gustav Jung and others, that dreams contribute to the wholeness of our understanding. Yes, they add to the limited perspective of the ego, and they give us something. And I like how Robert A. Johnson held it. He said in his time that dream tell you what you need to know, but you don't. You don't know it yet. So with that, it is a conversation about humility and willingness. And sometimes that willingness to just crawl on the blade and saying, yeah, I heard you, my precious unconscious. Yes, but just give me a little bit of time to recoup and gather myself and actually record it and be with that. And for me, I think the hardest ones when I have repeated themes where I cannot walk away from and saying, I have not worked enough on this. I have not not even worked, but tended enough, honored enough, and brought it into the 3D reality with a ritual enough or rituals enough. And that is kind of, metaphorically speaking, come to Jesus conversation,
Yeah, I've always thought it was quite strange that we spend pretty much half of our lives asleep in dream worlds, and we don't really have a way of integrating that into this life. It's very strange.
We're not taught, are we?
Yeah,
Yes,
like
really
you would
taught.
think that that would be one of the classes that we took in school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I like your idea. I'm in full support. Absolutely, because this way we are honoring all of the psyche that's alive and well by day and by night. And it presents us symbolic language, right? With something quite often is so exaggerated, right? Or so bizarre, or so like, what was this about? That we're so ready to dismiss it. But I'm glad that thematic content keeps coming up,
Yeah.
where variations on the theme are so present and often enough that we wake up understanding that this is not just a dream. There is a message. And I thought I understood the message, or I thought I kind of understood the message, right? And so I'm a big fan of Robert A. Johnson, and so in his book that's called Inner Work.
Yeah, I see it right on my shelf.
Oh, there you have it. Yes, so it's available in the book format, but also through audio, right? It's another way of taking it in. I love listening to book recordings. It's like being read to, right? So in that book, he's very big on emphasizing the 4 steps of the process of working with dreams and active imagination. And the 4th one is ritual. It's not enough to simply interpret the dream, right, as a 3rd step, but it's so important to bring in into 3D is an active step towards acknowledging, holding in very simple ways. And he recommends very inexpensive ways, right? Nothing big and drastic has to happen, but it has to have space in our lives. And I think that our lives have become so driven by efficiencies and pressures of still pressures of feeling good enough, right, to stay the course and to keep up with what is happening, that we forget to add an hour of the soul life to each date, soul
Yeah.
life.
And like try to integrate that experience into like our forward movement in life. Yeah. Interesting. My mind is going down a different road, but I want to stay on like the path of this conversation. So
Well, I think that both are possible. Both are possible. So bring it. Bring
yeah,
it.
I was just thinking about like, as people have psychedelic experiences, like there's such an influence on like the integration part, but I'm just thinking of dreams like each night is sort of like a mini psychedelic experience that isn't really acknowledged.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I like how you hold it, how you express it. Absolutely. Because expanded states of consciousness are available to us, yes, by day and by night, within various sets and settings and psychedelic environments. Psychedelic setting is one of them, one of many, but we know that it comes back to the indigenous ways, right, of cultivating connection with the spirit and so on. And I come from a tradition of Stan Grof's teachings, yes, and now with his Grof legacy training, both holotropic breathwork and psychedelic training are part of that, because times have changed and people need to be prepared. And so holotropic breathwork, which does not utilize any entheogens or any supportive medicine plants, what have you, is a training ground for teaching individuals how to work with expanded states of consciousness within the context of psychedelic sets and settings. Yes, but I like how you are bringing and bridging it together. The show is on. Yes, by every night when we go to sleep, simply go to sleep, the show is on.
It's accessible at any time if you choose.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you
I like to
really
hear.
related to your story. Because you've always been quite intuitive throughout your life. Did becoming a mother enhance that or open up your intuition in new ways?
Big question. Yes. Yes, I have been intuitive since I was young and very sensitive to the environment. And that was a plus, but it was also a big responsibility and sometimes problematic, to be honest. So becoming a mother intensified it, but I would even say becoming expecting mother intensified it rapidly, because when I did realize that I actually am expecting, I knew exactly that I'm expecting a boy. Even though before I was pregnant, I just thought, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to raise a girl, right?
Mm.
You know, and when I understood that, oh, I'm pregnant and I'm pregnant with a boy. So that was my deep knowing. And unfortunately, where I was in Belarus at that time, the ecological environment was a huge challenge. And we already know that ecology plays a big part in how women are experiencing pregnancy and challenges that are inherent in that state of being.
Yeah.
and tending to new life. So I understood then that no matter what the doctor said in terms of premature birth possibilities, I said it to myself, being a 20-and-a-half-year-old, and I said it to my doctors that my child will be born 9-month day in, like the day of 9 months that you said, my child will be born. And it took me as a just youthful exuberance and something else, right? Because the statistics were not on my side, and what they knew was not on my side. Guess when my son was born? 9 months, that very day. And it was not an induced labor. So yes, there is something when we are, when we become guardians of life within us. And that is not only carrying a child, biological child, that expands far beyond to idea, to a way of living, to developing a new attitude, bringing a new attitude, new value, living our values, what have you. List continues. But when we are becoming guardians of that life within us, whatever that means to each of us, something bigger opens up. It's like a big door. I just knew what I knew, and I knew how to do it. And don't ask me, nobody taught me, but I said that that will be so, and that was so, plain and simple. Yeah.
We talked about a door again. There's lots of doors.
Yes, lots of doors.
Okay. Because you were so connected to this inner knowing, this thing that you can't explain, was there ever a time that you didn't want to be associated with that and wanted to shut it off?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. In terms of intuition, oh, yes, many a time. Because quite frankly, it could be shocking for the system to see a little too much,
Yes.
to know a little too much, to make connections that are really not linear or non-linear. Yes, yes. That happened a number of times, and many firsts in that one, I would imagine, right? Coming back to our earlier in our conversation. So I remember a stark time when we moved to Belarus from Sakhalin when I completed second grade. It was 1982, and we exchanged apartments. Right, that was the spirit of the day. And apartment that we received belonged to an elderly woman who raised a daughter, who was a professor, in a university, actually, professor, who lived, the building where we were living in Belarus was kitty corner across from the university. It was built maybe 50s or 60s specifically for staff and professors and the administrators of the university, so that they have direct access and quick access to universities, facilities, labs, whatever they needed to do, depending on which specialization people were training in. Maybe you come in and it's a lab filled with instruments, right? Speaking of piano, right? So we moved to this apartment, and all of a sudden I am shocked into awareness of connection through the items that woman who was at that time departed, that the items were left behind, and I could not speak to anyone about this. It was so shocking to my system that I just did not want to walk into one of the rooms at all. I was avoiding it at all costs that I could. And then somehow I convinced my mom to just move some items without explaining why I really wanted her to move them. And so things were happening by night too that I was experiencing. And there was a point in time that I said, like, I don't want to see it. I want to see it. I don't want to experience it. I just want to be quote unquote normal. Yes. Yes. So gracefully, the door partly closed enough for me not to be terrified or not to feel that I'm alone. I can't speak to anyone about those experiences. And I'm grateful that the thread, that intuitive thread, never stopped. But then it was a matter of me trusting it or dismissing it and arguing with this and making sure that I'm actually accepting my parents' guidance rather than relying on my own. That was a different kind of struggle.
Yeah, that's really powerful of being able to insert boundaries within that to choose what is authentic to you.
Exactly. And what actually amplifies my authentic voice rather than quiets it down because I'm in shock and I can't even speak about this. Yeah. So there is this continuum, I guess, of how much the psyche at a given time can embrace and be with, and what may be too much.
Yeah, and then the fact that you're able to communicate with it and it understands you, to be able to like, you know,
Yes.
listen.
Yes. Because it's a very high level intelligence, if you ask me. That's one of the ways to hold it. And I believe it is part of all of us, no matter whether we are even believing in this or not. You know, we are unique beings, and our capacities that we're only beginning to tap into, what we're only capable of. Every one of us is gifted. Of course, there's some things, if we believe in previous lives, sometimes they're called past lives, but they could be also be in the future, so we'll call them previous lives. And then, you know, some believe that, okay, something that comes very easy and natural for us here in this lifetime is something that we have worked out before, maybe lifetimes before. Yes. And then other things that are edging, that's a grown edges, and they're so evocative and they're so soul shattering at times. Maybe this is something else that is needed at this time for each of us to work out, but is difficult for whatever else reasons, you know. For instance, we know that from unfortunate history that in 17th century and, you know, beyond and other times, people with well-developed intuitive abilities were executed as witches, executed as rebels, as ungodly people, what have you. And many times they were women. Majority of them were women who simply tended to the sick, who tended to well-being, who tended to navigating the earthly and then the spirit worlds to make sure that there is peace and understanding. And there is not too muchness going on in their villages, what have you. Yes, kind of speaking to the spirit world, to the Holy Spirit, if you will, what have you, however you're going to hold it. But I think that imprint, sometimes it's called a persecution imprint, clearing that, and it goes by many names, is a work of a lifetime too. So I believe that when we speak about carrying forth authentic voice, it also means we are clearing centuries and generations upon generations of hurt and pain and tragedies for carrying forth that voice. It was hard earned for us. And we live fortunately at a time, less ideal, of course, however, is fortunate enough where we can speak our truth enough, often enough, loud enough, whispering enough, right? And carrying forth enough to add to the collective, if you will, collective authentic voice of humanity. Is it ideal? No, but I don't think it's supposed to be ideal. We're on planet Earth. Welcome to the school.
Yes. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm right there with you in the trenches. Yes. Yeah. It wouldn't be planet Earth training, right? Would it be if everything was so smooth and
Right.
just, yeah.
to think of it that way makes it feel like more of an adventure and takes a little bit of the seriousness off of it.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. The sense of humor is also so priceless, and so underrated, I believe.
But speaking of school, you you went from counseling, and
Mhm.
then how did you find transpersonal psychology from that?
Yes, yes. So I went through counseling program and I graduated in May of 2003, and it was from Michigan University. The program itself was innovative enough because it was a cohort system. We worked during the week, our regular jobs, and during the weekend we were students. Fortunately, not every weekend, but often enough it was Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. So we were in sessions. And while I really appreciated what was gifted to me through that program, I wanted to continue, I just knew that I needed to pivot. I needed to pivot enough in attitude and what's possible and what's offered further than mainstream. It was high quality mainstream, and I'm very grateful for that education. So it took me, while working full time teaching music and also counseling students, it took me 7 years to find and to return to school and to begin my PhD. 7 years. So I almost took it to the point of where I would, not be able to be even considered for advanced standing because it's a very similar field, psychology and counseling. But I made it right under the wire. Yes. So I explored medical anthropology, specifically psychological anthropology. So I checked out that program at Michigan State University, and I understood it's not mine. It would be a continuation of my journey from master's. And so my first semester, right on the drop date, I dropped because I understood in my soul that I need different pathway. And I also need teachers who embody their essence differently. It's not good or bad, it's just different. And I had to trust that. Some people would say, like, oh my gosh, you got into the program, mainstream, you got it made. Yes. And I had to make that choice, and I'm glad I did. It was taking risks, and believe me, even to get into this program, for a year and a half, I was preparing because I was taking anthropology courses that were never part of my curriculum. And I aced those, got an A in every one of them, and with all the requirements, got in. And it went through first 3 weeks or so, and it's like, oh, not that. So imagine if I just counted my investment in it for a year and a half, perhaps longer, right, to even get in, and just stayed the course just because.
Yeah.
I think I would have done disservice to my own calling, to my own inner potential, and also disservice to my psyche. There's a violence of the kind that we don't often speak about, that we can do to our own psyche by not trusting, not quite that. Thank you. So great. I'm so grateful. And yes, it was expensive, year and a half of coursework. Yes, it was this. Yes, it was, till 3 a.m. filling out quizzes and submitting papers, on consistent basis. Yes, it was just to get into the program, to meet requirements. And it's still not what I thought it would be. So I had to say thank you so much and write wonderful email, in my perspective, wonderful email honoring this and saying thank you so much. But I respectfully need to find another community. And so after that, it still took me a little bit of time, but in August, actually in spring of 2010, right when I began formally my holotropic breathwork training, a 2-year program, I also had to make, decisions. I was admitted to programs at that time. Again, one of the mainstreams, but was close by. And it seemingly allowed for more possibilities. It was interdisciplinary health sciences field versus transpersonal psychology. Being in Michigan at that time, I'm raising a teenager. who is big in sports and, athletically gifted and in swimming, and we're in swim meets all over the place, 5 a.m. swim, practices and afternoon swim practices, weekends are relays and all sorts of things you can imagine. And then, that second program is actually in California. And I would have to fly there, fortunately, only 2 or 3 times a year, depending on what's going on. So how can I do that? And then, of course, there was another program in California, which I considered, but at that time, it would require me coming in once a month, 10 months out of the year, and I was certainly not go. No matter how I attempted this, it just even conceived this. So I could not even start because it was just not doable financially for me. And with that, it's interesting part again, who we surround ourselves with. At that time, when I came to a decision-making point, do I go with more traditional program that does allow flexibility at Western Michigan University, where I'm given a full ride and assistantships so that I will never have to worry about providing for myself and my child and go to school? Or do I go into the transpersonal field that allows me a whole lot more freedom to explore who I am and what I'm here to bring into the world? But it comes with student loans. It comes with trips to campus, right, to residentials. And it comes with financial unknown, because I would have to continue to do a whole lot to make it work. In my circle at that time, only everyone but one person said, "What kind of a decision? It's so clear. You go for a full ride. What's wrong with you?" Who do you think you are, basically, right? To even consider this decision, it's like full ride with assistantship. You've got it made, do it. And only one person, and I'm so grateful to him because he was my mentor for a long time. And he said something to the extent that, you can't sell your soul, you can't lose your soul in the process. And in essence, as I'm sharing this right now in our conversation, it resonates with my maternal grandfather's teaching when I was 3, 4, probably earlier, which in Russian was, call is "Я тебя куплю," I will purchase you, I will acquire you, right? I will buy you. And my response was, "Я не продаюсь, I'm not for sale, I'm not for acquisition, I'm not here to be taken." And that deep recess of my psyche, without making direct linear connection to that was the power where my grandfather's teaching kicked in and said, "No, you need to go your way. And I know it's far more expensive, drastically more expensive, drastically more unknowns here in this process. And yet you are not for sale. You cannot allow the financial cards, if you will, to direct your decision." And that was a very tough moment. And I'm glad that I went with the cell, honoring that and honoring in the process my grandfather, it turns out, now that we think of it this way. So this is where the teachings that are long forgotten somehow light up in our embodied beings and show the way. And quite often it's so irrational to the 3D consideration set. It is like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're doing what? You're taking student loans to the max, and for how long? How are you gonna reconcile this? Well, I don't know. All I know that I cannot not do it that way. And that was enough. One voice in a human body was enough to outweigh other voices who were against that, but also that link, the ancestral link, as we're now acknowledging, as I'm acknowledging, lit up. I'm not for sale. I can't be directed. lured into decisions based on finances alone.
So making that decision because you chose yourself.
Yes. And I chose more even of me that I didn't realize that, right? It's just something in me, yeah.
Yeah. How did things open up for you after you made that decision?
Very swiftly and very quickly, and the ground did appear before each step that there was no ground, right? So what happened was this, that I was able to, in the cohort system, to go in step. And even then, when I decided to change my dissertation topic, my dissertation proposal was already approved in the heavy committee, and I'm flying back from California, over 1,000 feet in the air, and it dawns on me that I'm done on this topic. I need to do a dissertation on an entirely different topic. And I land, and I lived with this for a while, and then I spoke with my dissertation committee chair, and she was very clear with me that if you choose, to go in a different direction and redo your proposal, I'm not going to chair your committee.
Mm-hmm.
And for 2-3 weeks, I was in dialogue and conversation with this wonderful professor, very well acknowledged in the field. And I realized that she is unmovable in this position, and I honor her decision. So I had to take another risk. And that's another how authentic voice kicks in, right? And my peers at that time look at me, it's like, who do you think you are? And what do you think you're doing? You have green light. Your proposal is approved in the first, one semester, ready, set, done, committee in place, and you have a great chair. What is going on here? I said, I was there, up there in the air, and another door opened up, right? Speaking of doors. And I just realized, I can't write anything else on this topic. I need to go into the topic of holotropic breathwork, expand the states of consciousness. In the air, it comes to me, yes. And swiftly, even though it was not easy, but swiftly, within a matter of weeks, I was able to reassemble my dissertation committee. I was able to petition for and receive approval for to receive a dissertation chair who really changed my life and changed the direction of my whole dissertation process. And get this, okay, with all of this commotion, losing half a year in the proposal, weeks in negotiating with the previous chair, weeks negotiating with a new chair to bring new chair on board, I actually was able, and I kid you not, to graduate a quarter earlier than my cohort scheduled graduation. My peers look at me and said, who do you think you are? And once I had that idea, once I trusted it, once everything aligned out of thin air, seemingly out of thin air, but that's again, the divine support is always with us. It asks us to take that creative risk based on the deep knowing. It wasn't just someone else's idea, right? I just need to bring it into focus. It was something that came to me, and in a way I could not ignore and I could not renegotiate it, right? So I had to start from scratch. And so my graduation, so I started in August of 2010 at the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, which is now Sofia University. Started my doctoral program, Advanced Standing. And I graduated not in May, not in June. My graduation date is International Women's Day, is March 8th, which is coming up very soon here. And it's 2013. So this is what happens, if you ask me, when we insist in honoring our own deepest knowing, despite of what 3D realities and 3D voices, and I say it with honor. By this, I mean voices that are looking at financial underpinnings only, above what needs to happen, what kind of leap of faith has to happen. So that's what happened. And then typically, it's known in the field that usually graduates from doctorate programs, PhD and the like, are typically sent into the world for a year or two, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 or 5. And then they come back and maybe they're, hired back in, for some it happens much sooner, yes, but vast majority will have at least a year of hearing, right, that earned degree into the world and really experiencing themselves legitimately in that expanded state, right, legitimately with having this larger than life sense of self. Hey, for 12 months after a graduation, why not? But we're asked to come back to our own size, in a sense, which is never our own size again, right? But that's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
And then we can come back and, begin teaching. But something different happened for me. You asked me, like, what happened? Well, in that very year after I graduated on March 8th, 2013, that very year in late summer, I was invited to teach at Saybrook. I didn't have to wait for a year. I don't see it as my accomplishment. I see it as a divine provision. So when we're willing to take risks, the divine will hold. And so I've been teaching at Saybrook ever since. And so, yes, but also outside of terms of academic life, which is valuable. I believe that each of us is asked to take it beyond our own professional settings, yes, that have their own well-established architecture and further into the world. And I believe doing that in our own ways. For me, it's mentoring. For me, it's also now writing, such as Substack writing. My birthday this year, January 30th, I just had an idea I could not honor. And that's another way, right? When it comes in such a way that I could not pay attention to it, I have to give it a thought and consideration. And I accept it and welcome the idea to actually begin sharing my own authentic voice outside of academia, which is very important to me, right? Because I've invested so much in academia and will continue to do so. But I felt called upon to take ideas and thoughts and educational conversations, be they through poetry, be they through growing a kitchen living orchestra. So that's another conversation. Yes, to others, like-minded individuals who may never return to academia. It's not for them, and I don't blame them. But they would like to continue to learn together with those who have walked the path, continue to walk the path, and feel called to expand that intellectual, soulful, creative, authentic community in ways that they're called. So with that, just so you're not wondering what we're talking about, right? Started this Substack publication, what they call it publication, but it really is a way of sharing. So it's called Earthside Academy. So it's earthsideacademy.substack.com. Very easy. So it's a born baby, and I'm challenging myself every moment that I reasonably can to dwell in that space, because writing is not easy. Maybe for some it is, for some is not, and that's another avenue of exercising authentic voice and sharing from my own lived experiences, because I believe that it is of value.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to put the link to that into the show notes so people can click on it easily.
Yeah, thank you.
Being at Saybrook and knowing you in an academic context as well, I feel that students are very drawn to you because you are so rooted in your authenticity. And so it's a gift that you're now able to offer that in a different way outside of the academic world, especially in a time like right now where people are going to be really looking for guidance, I think. And I think you're looking to build some sort of community with your Substack, is that right?
I'm hoping to, yes, absolutely. So it's beginning to form itself actually as we speak. Somehow, again, the individuals that I never thought that would even reach out somehow reached out, and that specifically, yes, for me, I have a vision for it to invite those outside of academia, right, into the fold, so to speak. Yes. Specifically those who, again, for a variety of reasons, may never pursue academic path, but feel that they would like to be connected and they would like to explore ideas and, again, educational opportunities and thoughts that are connecting everyday life or down to earth living, right, with the cosmic flair. That's the idea. That's what Earthside economy is: down to earth living with a cosmic flair, including kitchen shenanigans. And why wouldn't it be? Yes. And thank you so much for your kind words and reflections. Yes, I feel that the field of education is part of my path, and it has been since I began teaching at the age of 18, but of course it began earlier. And yes, I believe that there are different ways and different settings for us to share more of ourselves and from our lives. And in that, we're also giving others opportunities to affirm their own authentic voices. For example, okay, if Marina is writing that, about what? I think I can start my own Substack. And my answer to this is absolutely. Today is the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're hearing this, maybe that is your sign. Yes. Oh, whatever that is. Substack is only one of the avenues, yes, to share thoughts, ideas, poetry, creative work, music, what have you. You create your own, but just venture into this field, believe in yourself, know that, yeah, it's not going to be easy, it just isn't, but it is what it is. And yet, when we lean into what we know deeply, just like I knew on my own birthday, January 30th this year, it's like, I need to start, and it's no longer up to me. I've had enough signs, that on my birthday it just came absolutely clear. It wasn't just an idea, but it was in incubation for a long time. And then it's like, now is the time.
Yeah, I think it's a really wonderful idea for you because it allows you to connect with a lot of people at once and sort of preserve your own energy in a way.
Thank you. I like that. I like that. Thank you. I did not appreciate fully that angle until you mentioned this. Thank you. Yes. It's almost like we are taking a route where we can condense our own energy enough than to offer it as a elixir-like fashion rather than a diluted version.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful way to put that. Because you're in Sedona now,
Yes.
and going there from being in Michigan for like 20 years was probably also a big risk for you to take.
Yes.
How has being in Sedona supported your authenticity?
Coming to Sedona is another huge risk, and that was entirely unplanned. So to answer your question first, how it's supporting, I really appreciate the energy that I can hermit here, and I could be more of my authentic self than elsewhere, because the acceptable and accepted, if you will, or even expecting boundaries are so much more fluid and more permeable here than they were for me in Michigan, in my experience. So here I could save quite a bit of energy, even deep down inside, on an unconscious, subconscious level, of being concerned, oh, okay, how do I fit in? How will this work out? And how will that work out? I can just be more. And there's so much value for me in just being. We need a break. We wear so many hats. We wear so many personas, speaking in Carl Gustav Jung language, right? Which is legitimate masks, legitimate roles that we wear. Yes, they're specific to sets and settings. They're specific to environments, communities, etc., right? Obligations. And Sedona, what it did for me is, even though I hardly go anywhere, right? Seriously, people say like, "You're in Sedona, you don't go." It's like, I'm in Sedona. I don't need to go anywhere. So that's the paradox, because I am gifted an opportunity to be more of who I am and to be attuned more to my own rhythms. It's still a challenge, right? Navigating them. But that's the gift. But to share with you how it was absolutely impromptu landing is I knew I needed to leave Michigan. That was another intuitive hit that I had. And I had to explore it for a period of months and make several trips, exploration trips to Alaska, 2 trips to be specific, very brief, but I needed to be there on the ground because I was drawn to Sitka, Alaska. But I wanted to touch the ground in other places in Alaska just to feel the land and to understand this. And I knew that, Sitka on Marina Island was really so incredibly energetically attuned to Sakhalin Island, where I was born and raised, that it just intricately like took me in. I felt at home. I felt at ease. And one, of course, downside is that Sitka is fairly small, and the rest of the island is national forest, and primary way of transportation are planes. And I was able to reconcile it with myself. Okay, this is going to be my life, and this is how that's going to be. And I left Michigan, reducing my belongings to a car, my dog and I. And so we're packed to the gills in Honda 2014, blue color, just in case you're wondering, sky blue. And off we went, meeting a friend of mine with whom I went to school in Santa Fe. And he said, okay, we're going to, spend a little bit of time in Santa Fe, then we'll go to California, you get to visit your friends, and then I'll make sure you get to your boat. He's very protective of me. Make sure you get to your boat. Because I was going to take a boat to Sitka, because with my dog and the car, that was the way. So I could not fly. It had to be, this way. A lot of nuance, a lot of preparation, a lot of considerable amount of investment, right? Energy and otherwise. And so after Santa Fe, he says, okay, we're just gonna go through Sedona and then we'll go to California. I said, wait a minute, you never said Sedona, you just said Santa Fe in California. Yeah, but I haven't been to Sedona for 20 years, he said, yeah. So we argued in an epic way, which we typically just don't do. It's not in our relationship, right? We're friends, and it's just like, okay, you have your perspective, I have my perspective. But all of a sudden, in Sedona, in a way, he was like dragging me, metaphorically speaking, right, to go along. And after maybe 2.5 hours of going back and forth about this, I said, okay, I'm putting it on the record. I'm only going to Sedona because you're my friend. I want you to hear me right now, I said. I'm only going because you're my friend. Otherwise, I do not want to go to Sedona. And here's how another very remarkable and uncanny way how the daimon can trick us. And can sometimes, when we have so much resistance against something, such as me going to Sedona, something deep in me, could it be, that knew that everything will change, and maybe parts of me were not ready for that change. So on a day 2 in Sedona, after going to a vortex and really sitting there, kind of contemplating under the tree with my dog, and meeting a being in the form of a woman, but really who disappeared after conversation when I turned back. So I'm kind of connected the dots and realizing it's like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be in Sedona? And of course, my friend one, just like, he just couldn't believe it. He's just like, what? You just planned for months. You just made 2 trips, short, however they are, but you still, what are you doing? I said, okay, wait a minute. Did I or did I not tell you I don't want to go to Sedona? Well, I spent 2.5 hours or so about, arguing about this. Now I said, deal with this. This is the last thing I want to hear from you, because you are co-responsible of me being in Sedona to begin with, And so then, another pivotal moment, I had to make a decision. am I strong enough in my conviction?
Mhm.
And I'm not speaking here in intellectual ways at all. Yes, but that deep down conviction, that river beneath the river, which recipient called Estes, whose writing I absolutely love, river beneath the river. Yeah, the deepest part, the deepest currents of us. Am I convinced enough to make that change? And I felt that I was. And even though it was costly, it was absolutely necessary, and it's the best thing that happened. And I will tell you, my mom was beside herself when she heard that I am not going to Sitka, but I will go to Sedona. Sitka and Sedona start with an S and with an A. Go figure. Alaska starts with an A and with an A. Arizona starts with an A and with an A. I mean, the divine hints of humor is afoot.
Very funny. Yeah.
It is, it is. And then a friend brought it to my attention, said, wait a minute. Sitka begins with an S, ends with an A, and so does Sedona, and so does your last name, Smirnova. Now, my middle name is Alexandrovna. Said, wait a minute, said my friend. Your middle name begins with an A and ends with an A, just like Alaska and Arizona begin with an A and with an A. What do we know? What do we know? And it's humorous, and it's also epic, and it's humbling. And with this being, I'll call her a being, because probably calling her a woman would not be recognizing her fullest identity, whom I met in the vortex here, second day where I was in Sedona passing through, right? Grudgingly.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Dragged against my will, for, taking one for the team, for my friend. And what she said to me in a very brief conversation, she approached me, right, with my dog Star. She said, may your day be filled with many miracles. And she smiled and she passed me on my right side.
Hmm.
And it was so uncanny, this whole conversation, the whole meeting, that I turned as soon as I could, once I could not see her in my peripheral vision, and she was no longer there. And there was nobody else around. She could not have been hiding in the crowd or anything else. And my friend saw the same being on the same day, on the same trip, on an entirely different part of the vortex, because we kind of worked together for a while. Then we came to Plato and we wanted to have our own experiences, It's like, I think we had enough of arcing for 2.5 hours the day before. We
Yeah.
just needed to chill, okay? And then when I was waiting for at the car, we agreed, so whenever you're ready, just come back to the car, because signal is non-existent there. Cell phones, like, you can forget it, no signal. And the first thing I wanted to tell him, I just met a woman. And he said, I met her too.
Hmm.
And that was so, that common denominator, that being, right, more than a woman, and being showed up for him and for me in entirely different parts of the vortex. That's the only conversation that we had among all of these people,
Yeah.
tourists and locals. But that's what preparing the ground, that's how divine works. That's how the cosmic intelligence, if you will, operates upon us. Sometimes it shows up for 2 or more individuals nearly at the same time in the same setting, to reassure that we are actually with our wits. Yes.
Yeah. So being in Sedona, do you feel that there's a specific reason for you to be there? Are you discovering well, that's
Yeah,
your
thank you. I am thrilled that you asked this one, because I had to make a leap of faith without knowing more. And several months later, after I was already in the vicinity of Sedona, not in Sedona proper yet, so I was still working on navigating the transitional plan, but I was already in the vicinity. And I received a dream, and that's again connection, right? We just spoke about dreams. And the dream was very simple, seemingly simple, in which I received the all night instruction. It was like a waking dream in a way, right? I was kind of asleep, but not really, but asleep. And instruction was in different ways, from different angles, explained to me why I am in Sedona. But the common denominator was there, what I'm here to do. I was like, and in the dream, I said, oh, okay, fine. And it was so wild, the why, and I'll just leave it veiled enough, right? Leave it to your imagination. The why. That I said, oh, okay. And I gave my agreement in the dreamscape, in the dream reality. And once I did, more started opening up in that direction, beyond me seeking it, beyond me forcing it. I mean, individuals started like reaching out, hey, oh, you need to go on this tour. I think you need to consider, okay, where is it coming from? Why am I being guided through others, even, yes, let alone through the dream life and also waking life? And Sedona is known to be a magnificent portal to you can think of it, to the spirit world, to the cosmos world, to the cosmic intelligence. It is very well established. It is not even not even humorous anymore, although it is. But things that are very alive and well here by day and by night, and people have various experiences of communication with what we would consider to be beyond the terrestrial world. And so that's all a part of opening to a larger transpersonal realities. So that's why I'm here speaking generally, because of the next door into the transpersonal unknown.
Amazing. More doors.
More doors. Who would have thunk it? Yes, more doors. Yeah.
As we wrap up,
Mhm.
is there anything that we haven't covered that you feel like is on the top of your mind or your heart that you would love to share?
Yes, often is. Often is. I trust that whoever is listening or viewing this episode or our 2 episodes, yes, is meant to see and to hear what both of us are sharing and offering, maybe in a very bizarre, humorous, far out way, and so be it. Yes, so be it. And I invite our listeners and viewers to consider what is their deepest knowing that would not let them off the hook, that will keep knocking on their doors of the psyche, embodied life, sometimes gently, sometimes, excuse me, time to open the door. And see what that would mean to bring it into manifestation, into waking reality, little by little, step by step. But first, to allow, I invite each of you to allow yourself to trust a little more what's arising in the depth of your being, no matter how far out it could sound to the rational mind, no matter how irrational and non-linear it may appear. Allow it to inform you, your perspective. Allow it. And why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it? It's there because it's miraculous in some odd, offbeat, enriching, soulful, and authentic ways. And when you are asked to bring something in the world, could it be that it is because only you can bring it forth that way? No one else would do.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I have one last question that I
Yeah.
use to wrap up the conversation. And that is, if your inner voice had a billboard, what would it say to the world?
If my inner voice had a billboard, what would it say to the world? Surrender. Onward. Surrender to what is and what will be, because it will be, and it is. Surrender, and it would be common with it like deep breath. There was a billboard that could breathe.
Or you can resist it and argue with your friend for 2 hours, but eventually.
Exactly. And then try to pin my Sitka experience on my friend dragging me to Sitka. I mean, we could just, be so humorous about the whole ordeal. But that is a humorous cosmic ordeal unfolding. And so let's consider surrendering to what is, and a trusting that ground will appear, the doors will open.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about like the comedy and tragedy masks quite a bit, because they're so symbolic in so many ways, for like divine masculine, divine feminine, but also we can't get through this life without humor. And in the darkest tragedy, there has to be that part of like humor in there to show you the contrast.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad that we are having enough opportunities for humorous conversations. And there are enough of humorous offerings in our communities, and nationwide, to take them in and remember that humor is medicine, and cultivating that sense of humor too. And I'm so grateful for your sense of humor, for your lightheartedness, so we can both chuckle and laugh about this. And yeah, absolutely. Why not? And may it also be with us every step of the way.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all of your wisdom and for sharing your story.
My deepest pleasure. Thank you, Whitney Ann, for inviting me and for weaving in this conversation together. It's precious to me.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. If you're listening and you like what you hear, please consider subscribing and rating this podcast, as it really helps get this podcast out to other people who might be interested in hearing it but don't know about it yet. And also, if you'd like to contact me or reach me, you can reach me at unconditioningpodcast@gmail.com or unconditioningpodcast on Instagram. Thank you so much, and until next time, stay tuned in to you.